Hey, Algebra 2. Today we're on P5, operations with rational expressions. So basically just multiplying and dividing these rational expressions. Basically, the rule applies to what we just did in the previous page when we were simplifying them. Basically, you just want to factor first, right? Whether it's GCF, factoring a trinomial, difference of squares, grouping, anything you can possibly factor, you want to factor it first. And then you're going to be able to cross off your like terms, all right? Or I should say your common factors. So in these examples, A and B, you're going to multiply the following rational expressions, and then I want you to identify the domain. All right, you're not going to have to write the domain in interval notation this time. I just want you to identify the excluded values. So for letter A, I'm going to first look at the numerator up here. And I think I'm going to be able to take out a GCF, right? My GCF would be 5x, and that would leave me with 3x plus 1. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and we are going to look at the denominator, which is this x cubed minus 3x squared minus 18x. And I'm first going to look, and I see that I can take out an x. So that's going to give me x squared minus 3x minus 18. All right, and then I'm going to move over to the top right. And in the top right, I see I have a trinomial that I can factor. So I'm going to go ahead and think of two numbers that multiply to be negative 15 and add up to be negative 2. And that's going to be a negative 5 and a positive 3, right? Double check your work. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. And we know that negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2, so that works out. Obviously, you might not be able to do this in your head. You might have to write down, blank times blank equals negative 15, blank plus blank equals negative 2, and then find your number. So you might not be able to do this in your head, and that's A-okay. It's better to do it, take a little bit more time and get it correct than try to do something quickly in your head and get it wrong. So we're going to erase this. All right, and then we have the denominator down there, so let's highlight that blue. That's a 3x squared minus 8x minus 3. So again, when we approach this, we are now going to first do 3 times negative 3, right? A times c, which is negative 9. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 9, but they have to add up to be negative 8. All right, so that's going to be a negative 9 and a positive 1. All right, and now again, you can do the grouping method, all right, where you split up this middle term into a negative 9x and a positive 1x, but we said that there's a shortcut, right? And that shortcut is to take ax, in this case, a is 3, so I'm going to take 3x, and I'm going to put it over one of the values I found, and then I'm going to take 3x and put it over the other value I found. Now, I can't reduce the 3x over 1, so this is going to remain 3x plus 1. But I can reduce this, right? I can divide by a factor of 3. So this is going to be x over negative 3. And that means that my other factor is x minus 3. All right. So in the denominator here, we're going to go ahead and we are going to write x minus 3 and 3x plus 1. All right. We do still have to go ahead now and we have to take care of this denominator right here and make sure that that is simplified. And so when I simplify this, we have another trinomial. I'm going to rewrite all of this. 5x times 3x plus 1. We have an x out in front. When I factor this, I'm going to have an x minus 6 and an x plus 3 because negative 6 times 3 is negative 18 and negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3, so that works out. And then we've got a times x minus 5, x plus 3 over x minus 3, 3x plus 1. All right, so when we make all these, when we cancel these common factors, it doesn't matter which fraction it's in. It could be in the right fraction, the left fraction. As long as you have something in the numerator and denominator, you will be able to cancel them. So for example, I look and I see I have an x plus 3 in the denominator, x plus 3 in the numerator, those cancel. I see I have a 3x plus 1 and a 3x plus 1. One's up top, one's on the bottom. And then I look and I see I have an x in the numerator and an x in the denominator, so those will also cancel. So my final answer here, I have a 5. I also have an x minus 5 in my numerator. And I have an x minus 6 and an x minus 3 in my denominator, and that's actually going to be my answer. Sometimes on a standardized test, you might see it where they distribute the 5 and then they FOIL the denominator, and that could be a possible answer, so you might have to look for that on a standardized test. But for our purposes here, you can feel free to leave it just like that. All right, we're going to have to go ahead and look for the domain, and we're just going to try to identify the excluded values. So we want to look at all these possible values, right? Every single one of these groups. So there's actually going to be 5 values that are not allowed. So if we look, we know that x cannot be 0, right? Because if I plug in a 0 there, 0 times anything is 0. So x cannot be 0, and we're just going to list these. Right here with the x minus 6, I can't plug in a 6, because if I plug in a 6, 6 minus 6 is 0. Again, that's not allowed. All right, so it can't be 6. Over here we had an x plus 3, so I can't plug in a negative 3, because negative 3 plus 3 is 0. If I look here, I can't plug in a positive 3, because 3 minus 3 is 0, so it can't be a 3. And then when I look here at the 3x plus 1, well, in this one, it's a little bit harder to determine what it is. Some of you might be able to look at it and see it's going to be negative 1/3. All right. The reason why it's negative 1/3 is because, again, we're looking for where this 3x plus 1 is not 0, right? I don't want it to be 0. So if we go ahead and solve this, just pretend like this is an equal sign. If we subtract 1 on both sides, now we've got 3x does not equal negative 1. We're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3. And when I do this, I can see that x is not going to equal negative 1/3. All right, so that's where that comes into play. All right, so I want you to go ahead, and we found the domain, we found the answer. I want you to go ahead and try letter B and see what you get. All right, so pause the video and then resume it once you think you've got the answer. All right, so when we look at letter B, we see that in this first numerator, we're going to have a y minus 3 and a y plus 2. In the denominator, we'll have y plus 3 and another y plus 3. In the second fraction, we're going to have a y plus 3. That doesn't change. This is a difference of squares, so y plus 2 and y minus 2. All right, now we're going to cancel some stuff out. So we're going to go ahead and take out a y plus 3. Doesn't matter which one you choose. We're going to get rid of a y plus 2. And I think that's pretty much about it. We can't cancel these because they're not the exact same. So that's going to leave me with y minus 3 over y plus 3 times y minus 2. And then I'm going to look for my excluded values. All right, so the domain, again, I have to look at this entire denominator before I cancel anything out, right? I'm pretending I'm not canceling anything. So I know that the domain x cannot equal negative 3, right? Because if I plug in a negative 3 here, that would be 0. It cannot equal negative 2, nor can it equal positive 2. All right, so that is going to be your domain.